really wish the wind was blowing this way because my hair would go that way as opposed to coming this way. Anyway, so the primary motivator for this video is that we're coming up on day 200. I want to say today is probably 198 and 200 would be during the week sometime. I just felt like there is something to be said about 200 because it just sounds like a very important number. But yeah, so I'm at TVA Norris Dam here in Tennessee. Super random thing. TVA, always thought about time variant authority, so I'm like, oh, I'm going to the TVA, guys. There's two spots, there's here and then down at the base of the dam that like you could probably drive to, so I'm gonna try and maybe do the do the second half of the video down there, but not 100% sure I can drive to that place, so we'll see how it goes. Another thought I was having just randomly is that I can like remember experiences that's happened during the trip just as new reference points, if you will. So it's like, it's not cold compared to some of the cold I've been through. I forgot, there's one of the videos where I was on top of a mountain in New Mexico, I believe. It was just super windy. I remember the bite of that cold was intense. And like when the wind was blowing just now, it was biting me a little bit, but nothing like that. But it like reminded me of that. Just like me prepping for this video, just mentally prepping myself for this video, is thinking about the times where I was actually sick in like Mount Rushmore. I think that was the last video that I made where I pretty much said like I accomplished what I needed to on the trip. Going with that idea now since it's here. Since that day 160 video, it's crazy, it's only been about 40 days, but I've felt a definitely release of pressure. There's definitely stress and pressure from like other things, but like for like what I'm expecting of myself on this trip, it's definitely much less. And having gone through all the experiences I've been through, it takes the weight off of like needing to do every experience, because it's like once you experience something, you can like understand whether you need to explore that or not. It's like finding a job, right? And finding your career in life. No one really knows what they're going to do with their life, but you have to pick up jobs, and the more jobs you try, the more things you know you most likely don't like. And if you know what you don't like, you can know what you can explore to be what you might actually like in the future. So going with that thought, it was just a lot easier to go and do things now, because I'm like, oh, that sounds similar to this, and or like looks similar to that, or like is described similar to that other thing that I've experienced, and I'm able to like say I'm good, like I can keep going, or I can like do something else, right? So ironically, the other ironic thing, this is by a dam. I was thinking about when I went to the Hoover Dam and just the experiences around that versus the experiences now and just the experiences in the future. Just like a lot more reference points. And like for people that think that we're just big data machines, and all it is just data points that we're analyzing, that's essentially what I have more of now, to like be a better thinker, doer, feeler, and everything. So yeah, so many tangential things that are coming together. The one big thing I want to mention is a thought that I was having recently about I forgot the major thought, but the second thought it inspired was, am I ready to die? And like over the years, probably first time I seriously answered this question was like in middle school sometime. But like being content with your experiences thus far, to say that like you're not missing out on anything if you die now, and or like you don't have any loose ends in terms of if you die, like you have to worry about something happening or not happening, or, you know, in general. I've always had a better acceptance of that in general, and that's not really the thing that I'm asking myself now when I ask myself, like, am I ready to die? But let me check my notes real quick, because there's something that so the major thought was, what have I learned so far and or at all on this trip? And that inspires me, like, am I ready to die? Have I learned enough for me to die? And I guess like the root manifestation of this life is experience, right? And behind experience is knowledge, and you can go either way, right? You can start with experience and then get knowledge. You can have knowledge and then apply it into experience, right? I was having a conversation, I'll name drop here, with my buddy John, in terms of like, just like general, keeping me sane on the trip. He's been super awesome, just in general. But one of the things I think I mentioned him in passing during one of our conversations was that I feel like I've gained enough whereby I don't need to experience a lot more. And I pseudo expanded that into like internationally and not just like within America. And within America and also definitely internationally, there's so much that I wouldn't know to exist and or to experience for me to like make that claim 100%. But like I guess that's the whole duality of the statement of like, have I learned enough, and like me answering yes, essentially. There will always be an infinite sea of unknowns in terms of knowledge and also experience that we won't be able to accrue in our lifetime, in any series of lifetimes on this earth, planet, universe, whatever abstract of manifestation you want to use for that. And the question of, am I ready to die? And have I learned enough? Is a deeper question that I wouldn't have gotten to if I hadn't been more open since my last video, day 160. And there's a deeper point there. I'm gonna mull it over a little bit more and maybe go down there, and we'll see how it transpires. But stay tuned. So this is probably the best angle I can get here. But I made it to the bottom. Now, you either instantly teleported here or I showed you guys a little bit of a journey how to get here. So either way, time for you probably didn't pass as much as time for me, of course. Tangentially related to that conversation earlier is the concept of knowledge preservation, which has been a ongoing discussion on how we should do it and what part of it is relevant to do in the new age and also just in general. I've been visiting a lot of museums, more than I thought I would have done before. When things go into a museum, when artifacts exist in a museum, it's preserved, yes, but is it preserved in a way that we can actually use it? I would say no. There's a lot of practical ideas that get lost once you put them in a box, in a cage in a museum, right? And ironically enough, I forget which one, but one of the museums in either Nebraska or Kansas, probably Nebraska, there was an exhibit about Native American stuff, and I think there was like some debate and or like legal action being taken about where the artifact should be and or like ownership and maybe other aspects of it, but like it was like a smaller display. And I think in general, like when I was in Juneau too, like there was the artifacts there, a lot of it Native American stuff. So one of the artifacts there was that there was a boat that was being reconstructed, like rebuilt. Not necessarily it existed before, but like they were using the practices from before to show how the boat was made, and the actual way in which things were constructed, the design that went into it, the implementation details, the engineering constraints and or processes that like define how things were made. All of that can't be understood behind a box in a museum, and the practical use of a tool, of an idea, or like of anything, any item specifically, you won't be able to know it just by looking at it. And I'm not saying like museums are bad and like we gotta destroy museums. I'm just saying that the things that people generally think as knowledge preservation aren't real knowledge preservation, because we're not able to reapply the knowledge that we're preserving. And I think that point there is where I'm stuck answering the question of like, have I learned enough? Like, my whole reason for documenting this is that, yes, it's for me like to look back on and continually improve my life, but like after I'm gone, it's part of what I'm leaving for other people to understand what it meant to like live through a road trip of this caliber, and also know what it means to like be able to do like you're able to see it a little bit differently in videos versus just pictures or words or like, you know, books and stuff like that. There's a like the immersion aspect, which is like VR, AR, like mixed reality, augmented reality. It's like the natural progression of like video content. Like you have pictures, then you have moving pictures, then you have moving pictures with sound, then you have moving pictures with sound that you can like interact with in a 3D fashion, right? Like that's like the next stage. But like I think there needs to be a better way in which that process is evolving, and in which we're able to innovate on our knowledge preservation tactics, because I think that's where I'm like trying to figure out what have I learned, and like what about me learning that stuff can be useful for the future, you know? So that's where I'm stuck with the first question. Like, am I ready to die though? That's just because of the other question above it. But like, if I answer the question above it, like, am I ready to die, doesn't really show up in that context. Like, generally, am I ready to die? Like, that's always generally a yes. And that brings up the third level of thoughts in that process, which was not a question, but the idea of like, people have said this in the past of like, the final thing that you think about, your final thought, is essentially what happens to you when you die. And it's not necessarily like you're like, there's different ways to interpret that. It's like if you think nothing's after this, and like after you die, like there's nothing, then that final thought is like permanently, like that's all you're living for the rest of your life. The other part of it is like, for reincarnation purposes and like and Hinduism, it's like whatever you think about is the essentially summation of your life experience, and the most important thing, quote unquote, that you have accrued and or attached yourself to, and like that's gonna decide essentially like it's like the summary of like where you're gonna head to in your next lives. In terms of like a heaven type of scenario, your final thought is just like your judgment, whether like you're gonna go to heaven or hell, essentially. So it's like there's different ways to interpret like what your last idea, thought, mental process means. And just like I've thought about that many times, and it's like obviously when you're dying, like most times it's spontaneous in the sense of you're not going to know what's happening or like what it is that's going on and what you're going to think about in that moment. Like you can think about what you're going to think about, but like saying that you're going to actually think about what you're thinking about now in that moment is not guaranteed, right? And there might be just some stupid little trigger that like brings you back to something that you thought you were over and or you thought like you had come to terms with. And because that trigger was specific enough to get you back to that point, that means whatever you thought was above that thought or like worth more, had more value than that thought, obviously didn't, right? Because like you were able to, it was able to get you to think something different as your final thought. So a lot of like spiritual people and like really devout people, I'm putting in quotes, I'm not trying to bash anyone or anything like that, but like one of the things that they try to do is just think about God all the time, think about whatever it is all the time, and that way when you die, like if you develop that habit and that behavior, then there's nothing that will bring you out of that, essentially. The thought intent behind that process is 100% good. Implementation, practically speaking, is really hard to do that, and the way that they do it in general is not very conducive to the life that they live while they're doing it. There's very few spiritual leaders that are able to do it effectively. I mean, I won't name names because I feel like I'll mess up exactly who I really want to name in that right now, but I think that there are people from different religions that the people in those religions would know who it is who have successfully implemented that, like, always think this thought, and that thought, if you live your life through that thought, then that thought will be where you're going to, and your final thought in general. So I don't know, it, like, the whole thought process just got me to thinking of that nature, and as it stands right now, I don't have a final thought that, like, I'm curating in my brain, and I'm honestly still exploring for that. So, like, whatever it is, there's been a few times where I thought, like, I could make this my last life, right? And I'm definitely over that, in the sense of, like, it's not up to me, right? I mean, there's a lot of other factors and previous factors that I'm not aware about that, like, are influencing what's going to happen to me after I die and everything like that. My friend Nando, like, we've been having conversations too about this topic, and oh damn, I hadn't thought and forgot it. Like, his whole like philosophy in life right now is, like, to have life experience and to live life, and once you're living life, like, you're making the most of it. And there's a lot more that goes into it, but, like, the whole point is, like, not to say yes to everything, not to always do something, but to always experience the moment to its full capacity and, like, live in the moment. I'm like, there's a little bit of a disconnect between us in that regard. Like, I'm not, like, I 100% agree, like, that is an important practice, but that practice isn't, like, the full process for me. Everyone's different, right? Everyone can think and believe whatever they want. My point for bringing up Nando in this case is that, like, we're very close. We have a lot of shared values. We also have a lot of different values, and there's so many people that have all these different things that they're coming with, and all of this tangential to the point I'm trying to stay focused on. But obviously there's, like, so many things that, you know, when you're explaining something, you don't know where someone else is coming from, so you're just trying to capture all the things that, like, could possibly, you know, be different, and it just distracts from the point more than it probably helps in general. But anyway, there's symptoms of, like, how you can, like, know that something's happening, right? And probably the best way to think about symptoms is like a doctor and an illness, right? Like, doctors don't know shit. They're trying to just see what evidence is there that something is the way that causes those symptoms. But to get to the deeper aspect of reality, I mean, as I was bringing up Nando, I think this was the point I was trying to say, is that, like, I'm always asking, like, deeper questions. Like, no, don't go any deeper. Like, this like, once you know this, like, you're good. Like, you can have everything you need. And like, I agree, but there's also, like, you know, I'm always looking for something deeper. But, like, that's coming back to the main point. There's a lot of things that a lot of cultures, religions, people have gotten right about life, but they're all symptoms, right? Very few, if any, have gotten to the deepest level of knowledge that drives all of what we're seeing, all of what we're knowing to be good and true, right? Or right, or righteous, or, you know, generally good. I think that if we understand that fact, we'll have a lot better success working together, knowing that no one has it right, but we all know what right looks like, and we'll be able to appreciate the different implementations of being right with the context that makes them right, you know? And that's what's missing. That's what I would say is if someone said what have I learned on this trip, like that point right there, hopefully I can like put it together in like a smaller sound bite also, but that point right there is what I've taken away so far. And I actually love where I've gotten to in the trip. So the first stage, so random right now. The first stage of my trip was Airbnb. The second stage is like hotels. We're entering into like a third stage right now, which is like hotels and living in my car. And I've literally been like sleeping in my car a lot more because like I'm like I was planning weeks in my first Airbnb segment. I was planning days in my hotel segment. Now I'm not even planning days. I'm planning like the day ahead. Like that's as far as I get. As long as I don't have something that I'm like next weekend I'm going to Georgia for like an event. So I know like a week from now I'll be in Georgia. But like between now and then, like I don't have a plan. I'm coming up with a plan as my last plan expires, which is essentially day by day, right? But like I love how I'm doing that, and like just that progression of like I've wanted this trip to be spontaneous, and like I've gotten it to the ultimate spontaneous form, and I've gotten like the full flow of like, you know, making it all happen, which I think is insane, and I actually love that part. So I'm saying I've been telling people like I have 4 states left that are not East Coast, which are Ohio, Michigan, Indiana, West Virginia. Essentially everything else is on the East Coast. I feel like I'm home. I'm back in EC. Like it feels like the trip's over, right? Obviously the trip's not over. I'm not saying it feels like it's over to like change my mindset and how I'm thinking about it, but like I feel home is the whole point. And while home has some attributes of being on the East Coast, being, you know, around certain ideas and people and stuff like that, it's just like all the experience I've accrued also fits into that now. So it's not like I'm like, if I leave the East Coast, I won't be home anymore. But like I've gotten to a place where I feel at home with everything I've lived in my life, if that makes any sense. And I think that's powerful. I think that getting there is like, one, we don't talk about it. Two, like for you to understand the concept so that you don't stress about like the symptoms that happen because you don't have that, I think is crazy. And I don't know, there's so many other things to talk about, but I think that's a great point to end with for right now. So I don't know, it's one thing to like be in a single environment your whole life and know that's home for you and like be like, this is all I need, and there's nothing wrong with that, but there's nothing wrong with that, with the only asterisk being as soon as you interact with other people, you're not like considering them as wrong or like saying something's wrong with them, and once you're able to have that like acceptance and tolerance of other people while doing whatever it is that you want to do with your life, I think that's the really essence goal. But like I feel like what I've gotten to is just like a deeper appreciation of that, and like for me personally, I think that's one of the things that I really, really wanted to find that I didn't know I wanted to find on this trip. So with that, we are I guess we left Kentucky already, so we're back in Tennessee. Gonna make my way through. I did a lot more zigzags in the Midwest East Coast part here than I thought I was gonna do. I would have just skipped things if it wasn't for external factors, you know, driving me actually going and doing the things I should be doing anyway. So, you know, life happens, and I'm gonna keep going, right? So this is your boy Nick Kumia signing off.